Hello, everyone. I am Natasha Ryan with the North Group, and this is our podcast, Time to Head North. Today, we have an exciting recap. We just got back from IPSB, Close Protection Conference in Vegas. Jake was there. Our head intel analyst, Steve, our CEO, was there, and we all had a big kumbaya with our colleagues and potential clients, current clients, and just a really overall nice conference, I thought. We were fortunate to be a sponsor, and I was lucky enough to help out by emceeing it. So we had our hand in this one for sure. So I'd like to just start by saying overall, I kept saying it kind of feels like that conference is my favorite because it feels like a high school reunion, which everyone kind of laughed at. I don't know how you guys feel, but it just although and that's great, there's still this sense of intimacy where you actually get to see everybody that you know and walk by and at least say hi and chat for a few seconds. Whereas opposed to some of the other conferences that are larger, it's harder to meet up sometimes. So that's what I enjoy so much about this conference. Steve, what was your take?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy the seeing friends, new and old, seeing people that we've followed or worked with over the last year, um, new ones, old ones. I think there was information. There's things that I would like to see more of. There's things that I would love to see less of. I think that the people that attempt to put it on, attempt within the bandwidth of which they're given to do it. I think there's a lot of information. It's very vendor heavy. It's very protector heavy. I think that there's a lot of good information that comes out of it, but I also believe that as an industry, it's we're missing some of the stuff in the direction that we're going.
We're coming back to that. Jake, what about you? Overall, what did you think? Was this your first conference, CPC?
Yeah, this was my first conference. So I worked the booth mostly. I got to catch a few speakers, but I mean, I met a ton of people. I mean, I probably talked to everybody there. Met a lot of young guys around my age that were they're brand new to the industry and stuff, and they're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and it was kind of, they said that they read some of my stuff before, so I was like, oh, okay, so awesome.
That's awesome. That didn't make
Kind
you
of
feel
have a
good.
fan. Yeah, but overall, I think it was a good experience. Learned a lot.
Do we now have a Jake fan club? Should we
I
set
would
that
I
up?
wouldn't say it. It could be like a Jake critique club, but I don't know about a fan club.
Obviously, I'm just
Yeah,
messing.
yeah, yeah.
His Instagram following did not go up from this.
It actually went down considerably, like a good amount.
Our residential country artist did not gain more followers.
Yeah, who thought that the security industry doesn't really mesh well with musicians? Who'd have thought?
Yeah, and those of you listening, Jake actually is a country singer, so this is not as out of left wing as one would think. Okay, so I'm gonna say from my perspective, just this is my second year. So compared from last year to this year, I will say I quite enjoyed the lineup of speakers. I was very happy to see some things on that agenda that I don't remember seeing the previous year, specifically when Janina Linka talked about mental health and resilience. Heard so much great feedback. And, the reason IPSB put that in the agenda is there had been so many requests from people attending that conference that struggle with issues that wanted that to come to light and wanted to open that floor up and have that conversation and hear more about it. So I was super excited to see her get up and be, vulnerable and articulate all at once and really let us inside. Even her saying, I take antidepressants. 10 years ago, that wouldn't have happened. No one would have been on stage saying that. So for her to get up there and be so forthcoming with what she's gone through and what she continues to go through and admitting all of that in front of an audience, not knowing who's going to run with it or what they're going to say. I just kudos to Janina. I was super, super proud of her for doing that, and happy to see it on a stage of people that it could really be of value to if they start having that conversation the way they should. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot. I personally, I mean, Brian Flannery's presentation was my
Yeah.
favorite.
Yeah, that was good.
I think that, I mean, obviously where we sit, I think there's a major lack of understanding for intelligence in our space, and to see the vendors and the providers and the folks that, you know, attempt to or do what we do every day as far as identifying threats and then reacting to them with whatever suite of services are being indicated as needed. I saw a lot of that. I see a lot of people moving towards technology use over, you know, brawn or experience. Um, I see a lot of that, and you know, and Brian Flannery he covered that brilliantly. It was really interesting to see the BEPP, as is, and IPSB all on the stage together, and you know, I've got a multitude of respect for most of those folks involved, and it's interesting because you've got, you know, you've got my good friend James Cameron, you've got you know, our good friend, you know, Chris Story, Chuck Tobin, who's phenomenal, and you know, these guys have all been in the industry for many years, right? And
Yeah.
everybody wants the same thing in some regards, but is trying to go about it in different ways, and you know, that subsequently has created some friction with certain people and certain groups. And I think that, you know, in the words of Lee Otten, you have to be able to address your problems to work on. And we do have some problems in the industry, and I think that these conferences attempt to address those in a safe space, right? Because if we can't talk about where our gaps are, our industry is going to fizzle out. You know, the people are going to go to more in-house services versus external services. If we aren't using intelligence to drive our operations, we're going to be losing the mark on the X to deliver the right services based on what the threat matrix is of the customers we're dealing with. So I think these things are people are starting to get to address those. I think Brian Flannery did a great job at you know, the behavioral profiling, the threat analysis side of and he really broke it down with his example and his story from his own experience on, yeah, you know, we all kind of joke behind the scenes on when the goofy stuff comes through the door, but then statements get made or actions get taken and you're like, wait a minute, that's pretty serious. How are we gonna address that? And I think Brian Flannery did a great job at that.
And good on Brian for having the wherewithal to know that the specific case he used involved a lyric from a Willie Nelson song, which, by the way, I never want to hear that song again.
No.
Very creepy now. That said, I believe it said, "See you around," or "I'll see you around." And he immediately picked up on, wait a minute, I know that lyric from somewhere. And it was indeed a threat that would have gone missed had someone not paid close attention and really analyzed the communication from the threat.
Well, I'll tell you, I think there's a training there for corrections departments that and you know, like Michigan Department of Corrections, for example. I mean, so many communications are hidden within those letters and those phone calls that are now recorded or documented or viewed, and some of that's used for subsequent court hearings, right? So if you get on I mean, when you're in the jail, the first thing they say, or the prison, is to say this is a recorded line,
Right.
You know, and you know, the way he used that is they looked at everything. And then he even said, we went in really dove in. We put, undercover folks and contacts, placement and access into to be able to collect on this threat that was against one person. But the overall story there that I got from that was through public-private partnerships, right? We have to better do this
Collaboration. Yep.
in collaboration to better mitigate risk. Like we do that with a healthcare client, right?
Yep.
We focus on collecting all aspects of the threat matrix, partnering with public and private entities. And I think there should be a focus on this with these conferences, right? On standardizing what that looks like, both from the governmental perspective and the private sector perspective, because we only have so much power when we're dealing with subjects of conflict, where we can protect, we can mitigate, we can encompass the bubble around that subject or their ecosystem, but we don't really have the ability to intervene without there being a threat threshold that gets met. And then
Sure.
and I think that's where it was really good to hear that there's agencies out there doing that out of what we've seen. I thought it was pretty impressive. It was pretty impressive just to
Yeah.
hear that. The other thing that I really liked is just the social time with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
We got to see a lot of people and hear where they've moved. We got to see, former coworkers who have moved on and work with other, groups, and they're thriving. And I think that's the mission of good leaders in this industry is to get people in no matter where we see them, they're thriving. And that's the goal, right? I mean, I've learned so much from so many people in that room. That's made me a better leader. And I think that's why I like going, to the IPSB conference. It's more about, I want to grow. Iron sharpens iron, right? I think is where it's at.
Well, I want to go back for just 1 second to getting all hands on deck on this stage to talk about EP standards. Because I thought, let's be candid. I think everyone was expecting a bit of a discord on stage. So I was super happy to see that it didn't get to that point. And I think, I think it was Chris Story who summed it up in the end to really speaking to what we're talking about across the board, which I think is the future of the entire industry, is more alignment with synergy, collaboration, and all coming together. He said it just like you did. There's one goal. We all want the same thing, better standards that everyone can kind of adhere to. So there's some sort of bar in a new way. It's just the roads to get there and the specifics look a little bit different depending on who you're talking to. So I think it's so important to have moments like that where everyone is sitting together on the same stage, because that needs to be the tune, right? That needs to happen more often. And we need to see these leaders collectively together more often, having open conversations that don't take a left turn.
Yeah, I would
Jake?
agree. I just want to add to that. I think that the industry understands it's pivoting, but we don't understand who the key players in helping pivot are going to be yet. And I think there's some shining stars coming out in that. I mean, I have my opinion of who they are. I have my opinion of what's hindering. And I think what's hindering is the stigma of this is how it's always been done, right? That's the death song of any organization or industry.
Any organization, company, anything. You have to change.
When we're not looking at cultural expansion or, I mean, I've watched a lot of people grow. I feel like I've grown over the years, out of either bad habits or certain issues. And, you can not like the way things are somewhere, but, when people grow out of that, we have to accept the growth and we have to understand what can we do to be part of that. And I think that's where, the industry is starting to catch on to that. We have people that are going to retire in the next 10, 15 years. Do we have new people that are going to come in? What we don't have right now is this post 9/11 era veteran warfighter coming out into the industry again, right? Being so far away from that now doesn't say we don't have warfighters, but we don't have the magnitude of what we had,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
2002 to 2010,
Right.
coming out, getting in the industry. That's an interesting concept, because you're going to start seeing guys that have less training militarily or from a law enforcement standpoint, because budget reductions or conflict reduction, but you're going to see, I think, a more educated technical protector come from that, right? Because I mean, I'll just put it like this. Well, some people were sitting behind a desk or sitting in a classroom. Some of us were off fighting wars or deploying, and came home, didn't know what else to do. So we just got into this industry.
Yeah.
As where some guys they're going to school, they're getting master's degrees, they're getting,
Right.
some guys are working on their PhD, and they're able to do that, because, there's not a conflict going on. There's not this mass consumption into the military right now. And that's interesting, because you're going to see a different style of protector. You're going to see a calmer protector, I believe. You're going to see a more open-minded protector. We do ourselves no favors. We come out of the military and we say, this is how we've done it. This is what we know. And then there's guys that are like, give me more knowledge, give me more knowledge, give me more knowledge. And that's the beauty of what I'm seeing the industry turn into, is there is so much knowledge. There are so many people with really, really good experience, whether it be military, contracting, government services, OGA, whatever it is. They're coming into this with a lot of experience and training, and the young guys need to adopt those folks in their life, right? And they need to feed off that, because they're not going to get the opportunity to get those same experiences unless we enter another conflict like we had.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that's a really, because I mean, a lot of people on those stages are super experienced people that contracted, they worked overseas, they worked in the intelligence community, and they were there during this time of uncertainty. And somebody said to me at the conference, do you think it was more uncertain then than it is now? I'd say no. We knew what we were dealing with. We knew who we were fighting. We knew what was going on. We knew kind of the threat matrix. And now there's more threats than there's ever been, and kind of the white noise is quieter than it's ever been. So it's a weird dynamic where we're at in the industry, right?
Yeah.
We're dealing with threats that are all over the place. And I think these conferences they're going to start taking some of the older guys in the industry, using that knowledge and experience of worst case scenario, worst case environments. But what we can't do is get tunnel vision on that and lose focus on the emerging threats that are facing the industry and our customer base.
Jake, I want to hear from you, since this was your first conference and you did get to sit on a few panels. I mean, what was your takeaway? Like, in the learning moments, what did you sit with and go, oh, yeah, that's interesting?
Well, I mean, like I said, I didn't get to sit on too many speakers or panels, but I learned the most from honestly sitting at the booth and just meeting people from all walks of life. And I actually wanted to piggyback off of what Steve said, because it was something that I was going to bring up about the shift in the new type of protector that we're going to see. I mean, I saw it firsthand. So, I mean, probably the two youngest guys that were there were these two Marines, younger than I am. They just got out of the Marine Corps, but out of everyone, like probably over 100 people that I talked to that entire conference, they were constantly picking my brain about intelligence. They're saying, how can I use this with my job? How can I use this to get better? And I think it really speaks to what Steve is saying, that we're going to see a new generation of protectors. I mean, they handled themselves well. I mean, you could tell that, yeah, they have the soft skills. I mean, they know how to communicate, but the fact that they had the eagerness to want to learn. I mean,
Yeah.
I probably, they're probably picking my brain for over an hour on like every single day that we were there. But yeah, I mean, just learning from the different walks of life. I mean, I got to go and check some other people's booths out, and seeing just like how people come from, they're more technology based. You have more people. I mean, granted, most people are more security based. They go to IPSB, but the technology and intelligence driven guys, I really had an interesting time talking to them because, like I said, it applies just as much for security as it does intelligence, I believe. For we all want the same thing, but it seems like everybody kind of has their own way of going about doing it, right? So, I mean, it seems like at the end of the day, we want to protect people. We want to protect information, at least from an intelligence standpoint. And we all kind of do that. But yeah, it was great. I mean, Steve really said most of what I was going to say, honestly. But yeah, I mean, I just had a great time. That's the first conference I've ever been to. I had a blast. I learned a ton.
You know what? Here's the thing, though. This speaks to the conference and kind of what I was saying earlier. The fact that it provides, and it speaks to you too, Jake. But I mean, the overall atmosphere of the conference, the fact that two younger guys felt comfortable just walking up and chatting it up. I mean, that says something. I think that's I guess hitting on also what I was trying to say, the comfortability at the conference. Like even walking around, I'm like, hey, what's going on? I don't know everyone, obviously, but the difference is that at that conference, I feel completely comfortable just sitting at a table of complete random people that I don't know and saying, hey, I'm Natasha, I'm at the North Group. Who are you with? What's your name? Where are you from? And it just is an overall, I think it's just a more inviting feel because of the size of it. And it is, it's just, I think it's a good group of people, honestly. I really do. Steve, do you get that sense of, you just feel like you're more at home almost is what I would say in that environment?
Yeah, I mean, I've been going there for several years to that conference. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one conference I enjoy going to because of the people that attend it. Um, and there's a lot of people, that we get to work with throughout the year that it just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think that I feel as if it's becoming a more close knit, trusted environment. I think we need to do better at communicating with each other outside of the conference, even
Yeah.
if we don't work together. I think, it would be a great idea to have, quarterly virtual, or once a year virtual
I love that idea.
conversations.
I love that idea.
I think it's kind of one of those things where if people are focused on community, the community, the close protector community, right, and how we can help each other. And again, it shouldn't be about feeding business. I see a lot of guys that show up to these things and all they do is focus on, how can I get business instead of building relationships, or they don't talk to people that they don't think can give them business. But there's a few people that all they do is just network. They don't, and I've learned I don't ask anybody for anything, right? I go there, build relationships, get dinner and with folks that I want to be around, and it's a good environment.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. I mean, that's what building your network is about.
So I just want to read because I did post on my LinkedIn and I asked people to share their feedback of the conference. I have to say it was overwhelmingly super positive. It was about catching up with people, enjoying the panels. Let's see. David Gonzalez writes, meeting up with friends in the industry was my favorite part, particularly great as I got to see people I haven't seen in a while. I think that's the theme of it, right? Like this conference in particular, as you nailed it, Steve, is just all about building relationships and seeing each other and catching up. Everyone also was commenting on looking forward to see what the next year brings because the numbers grew quite a bit from last year to this year. And I know it was either Chuck or Chris that said they kept hearing like, this is the one conference like I won't miss. This is it. This is the one I refuse to miss. So, those guys for all the work they did. And, I would just like to remind anyone listening, like everyone on the board who planned this also has a full-time job. So, it is a lot to take on. And I think they did a great job. I especially loved the fact that they even had their own coffee blend created. I mean, those little nuances and details speak to me, just because I know like those even take an incredible amount of time to plan and make that happen and put things into production and then get it there. And so kudos to everyone involved. I had a great time. And because I was emceeing it, I didn't have as much time on the back end at night that I would have liked to have seen people and hung out. But I'm even hearing from those people now, like, oh, you know, it was great to briefly see you. Let's check more. But I would like to remind people of what Craig McKim wrote today. He said, okay, now, yes, we had a great time in Vegas and it was a great conference, but remember to actually follow up with all the people you met, because otherwise it's just another trip to Vegas. Like, follow up on those relationships and those contacts so you actually build something out of the trip besides just a good time. I think you said put the work in network, which I thought was kind of funny.
It's really, really, really important. I've got a stack of cards that I'm going to go through. I'm going to respond to people whose cards I don't even have. I've been trying to make it because historically I suck at this. If in years past, where even if I don't know you and we met, I snap a picture of your badge. Great to see you.
Yeah.
I want to say that we live in such a volatile community. We work a lot. Some of us, you never know what somebody's dealing with.
Yep.
So just saying hi to somebody, you don't know what it's going to do to change their day. And I think that's really important, not to quote the kindness crusaders of the world.
Yes. TKG, the kindness games.
But being kind, to people. If somebody frustrates you in the industry, talk to them, grab a drink with them. I mean, the one thing that is changing about our industry that's amazing, and you can see it at these conferences, is ego.
Yep.
Is ego. And I think it's really important that people just humble themselves and build community. I mean, I live that be quiet and quietly let them watch you succeed mentality. But we're a small community and a much smaller, brother sisterhood of folks that do what we do, where we have to connect with one another. Craig's absolutely right. You've got to be showing the growth of yourself and your business and your industry and your capabilities and your desire to grow for people to gravitate towards you.
Now, we've obviously rah-rahed, and I have much love for everyone involved with this conference. But you did say in the beginning, Steve, there were things you would like to see more of. Can you kind of add to that? Like, what would you like to see more of specifically?
Well, I think so. There's a lot of things, and this isn't going to take away from any of the great things people do. Like you said, all these folks have full-time jobs. But I'd like to see more of the entrepreneurial side of the business, and I think it'd be great to have a full presentation on how to market your company yourself as a protector. What, not just qualifications, but what makes sense. I talked to several people that had a lot to say about some of our intel briefs and different things that we've done over the year. But one of the best feedbacks I got was from somebody I've never met and said, hey, you guys have been spot on a lot of your threat assessments and intelligence stuff. And I'm like, oh, cool. And then the guy like disappeared. I don't know who he was, but it was really cool. And I got his card somewhere, but what I got away from that was, okay, we've changed how we market. We aren't clingy. We're not begging for people to come to TNG or work with us. We just want to wake up every day and change the world. And that's our brand, right? That's what we get up to do.
Share knowledge.
We have a heart for that. And I think that's really important that, I've adopted that more than I had the year before that, right? Like I've gotten more away from, I need to hunt and kill so I can eat, and more towards, I just want to be around other hunters, other gatherers, and the food will end up on the table. You know what I mean? The food will end up on the table, and I think that what I want to see more of is that community orientation throughout the year. I would love to see more on the business best practices, what do's and don'ts. There should be a whole kind of hour on what not to do in owning a security business. You know, everybody has something to promise you, so buyer beware. You know what I mean? Like, everybody can build your business, everybody can help you with your marketing. I mean, you could have $5 million a year to spend in BD and marketing, and you could spend it and not get a thing from it. And that's the real deal. That's the industry. What I've also noticed is people are like, wow, I want to get the security business, but they don't understand the grind that goes behind it. I think that has to get discussed on a panel setting with mid to medium to larger owner operators that aren't board ran or seeking IPOs, seeking to go public. I think you take the 3, the 10, the $25 million company, and you put them on a panel and you say, okay, what do's and don'ts have you have, right? Builder 20 does this with construction companies, and it's amazing. They actually have intimate groups that get together and talk about what their issues are as a company. And it's amazing. It's an amazing concept. You sign NCNDAs, but I'm not saying IPSB should do that. What I'm saying is there has to be that type of community around what we're doing. I would also like to see more focus on intelligence driving operations. There was stuff on behavioral, and like I said, Brian Flannery did an amazing job, but tie that into an operation now. And how does that work? And there's a lot of theory, experience-based education behind this now, but how does it work when it comes into a business? How does a business use intelligence to not only mitigate risk, but grow? I think that would be another, and diversity and inclusion, I think, is really, really important. I think we need to start talking about that.
We did have Concentric take the stage on that briefly.
It was very brief though. I think we need to really hammer out where diversity and inclusion is important, where female agents versus male agents are value propositions. I think we need to talk about the things that people think about. There's a lot of instances where I'd rather have a covert EP agent, male female team versus a male or even just a female, because of their ability to blend in, respond. If our principals are females in nature, right, it makes it easier to have a female with them if they're out shopping, these type of things. There's a lot of different things in the operational function of an EP company that I think should get further discussed.
So you overall, what I'm hearing is you want more from an inside gritty look at what it takes to run a security business, from like the side of jumping off of it to, how that functions, what that looks like. And then also bring in the DEI part where it's like, let's talk about getting more female EP agents. How do we handle recruitment for more female EP agents and all of that? I mean, those are the topics you kind of want to run with.
Yeah, I think another thing is market fluctuation and costs. I think we should be talking about that as an industry because, the reality is what costs X in San Francisco is going to cost different in Detroit.
Right.
But the caliber of the person doesn't changes. And then sometimes it goes down in San Francisco than it is in Detroit.
You've seen that.
We're basing things off of geographical location based on the cost of living, not on the quality of individual. And that's something I've been hearing from a lot of folks that I believe is an issue that we need to address. The growth of the industry is going to be indicative on that, right? We have to address that.
Yes, and I do want to say, if you're listening and you want to be part of this conversation on any of these topics, I mean, we don't obviously have to wait for a conference to have these conversations. We can do it right here on this podcast or other podcast, or, we don't have to wait for a conference to do this. But I do hear you, and I'm a fan of. I always love the here's what not to do. We did that at GSX with building out a GSOC. Here's what you don't do. Here's what we got right. Here's what we got wrong. And I think that is so valuable to anyone in the position of wanting to start up a security company, to hand them here's what I would not do again. I mean, that's always the most valuable. Like
Maybe,
yeah.
yeah, maybe I missed this, but was there anything on threat climates regarding the conflict in Europe?
I think Scott might have touched on that with his intelligence briefing, but not specifically a panel geared towards what's going on in Europe. No.
So I think, being the International Coast Protection Conference, right, we should have more conversations on the international threat climate facing protectors and their principles. I think there should be a couple segments on that. I mean, I don't think we
did have LATAM. They talked a little bit about that.
Yeah, but
south of us, but not.
How much got talked about regarding Europe? Because I know that, like,
not as much as you would like. I can tell you that.
January, March timeframe of this past year, right? There were protectors trying to figure out how to get family offices, clients, in positions, right? Unknowing what was going to happen. I think that this is where intelligence comes into driving the operation, right? Where we got to almost like segment this out to where what a good protective intelligence program looks like, into a operational tempo based on geographical risk, based on economic risk to that geographical area, and then tie that into what that threat matrix is going to look like for that customer. I would love to see more of that. I know there are people out there doing it. That's the thing, because I talk to them. But I would love to see the conversation around that, because if intelligence drives operations, why isn't that discussed more?
And I would like to point out, I know Justin, he did talk about how to build a successful EP team. So that
Yes.
that was addressed.
That was a great presentation. I mean, I enjoyed that. I'm talking about full cycle, right?
Yes. Yeah, I understand. I understand.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're all coming at this from various different methodologies, which is great. But now, how do we come together with one way of I mean, there's 50 ways to skin the cat here, right? But how do we come at this from one perspective as a community, where we're covering all of the different factors? And this really, I mean, so many people cover this topic, but it's bits and pieces of the topic. And my point is, how do we bring it together in one holistic closing picture?
Well, I think we have the North Group's pitch for a speaker for IPSB next year.
Natasha Ryan.
Nope, Steve Hernandez.
Well, so for me, it's more about, I mean, there was some shenanigans on stage, once, which was whatever, but it's like, I want these young people that aren't coming at this with the threat levels and the experiences that a lot of the people in that room have. Like, there's some people in that room that they've been all over Hell's Half Acre and witnessed some of the world's worst that it has to offer as far as humanity goes, right? So, and these younger people don't have that, and they don't have that edge about them, which in some regards is good when they're working in Silicon Valley. Right? I mean, that edge has also been a hindrance to some of us coming out of the military. But how do we help guys understand that global threat picture, understand how to understand that for themselves without consulting a company, so that they can be better protectors? Because at this point, I just want to help people be better.
Yeah.
Knowledge is free. Knowledge should never be charged.
And it should be, yes, shared freely among whoever wants to receive it.
Which is why we push all the free products and stuff that we push.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't charge people for them. We're not doing that.
No, we push out our global threat intelligence report to just share what we've learned or seen or highlight threats going on around the world. I mean, if everyone could just collectively share and wrap their heads around that, and think about how much safer we could actually make the world. I mean, think of, and to a point, I know there's some things you can't share. I'm not daft in that vein, but I'm just saying
that's it. You just said it though. How do we make the world a better place?
Yeah.
There's too many people that wake up every day trying to line their pockets and make their net worth a better place, versus just making the world a better place and letting things flow from that. I think it's really, really important that, and I'll tell you, there's so many people in that room at that conference that have done so much and are so humble about it.
Oh, such impressive backgrounds.
You'd never even know.
You'd never know.
And we just got to stop the dislike. Some people don't like people because they said something or they did a job together. It's like, at the end of the day, our industry is so small. If you don't pay a vendor or you don't do something right, there is a time to apologize for that. If you handle something the wrong way on a project, there's a time to apologize and handle that. Don't move so fast that you make mistakes that ruin your reputation.
Well, I will say that I have watched you overcome, you're not a grudge holder. I appreciate that about you. You're willing to, call it a day, figure out what went south with someone and have a conversation. And I appreciate that.
You don't, there's not enough time in the day to complete all the tasks given by, the Almighty. So I think that you just gotta take the punches. I mean, people will traditionally in business call out your BS, and then they'll go and streak down a freeway, and I'm speaking hypothetically, right? And be like, I didn't do anything wrong.
Just gotta own it. Just own it in life.
You gotta own it. I'll tell you. I talked to somebody there who had done us wrong. Obviously, I'm not going to name him, and I just gave him a hug and told him, "I miss you." What's a sucker punch going to do? I mean, really. I mean, what? Yeah. And that's our mentality as protectors and warriors, right? As we're mean and we're gruff, but you know what? I love you, man. I miss you. I miss the good times we had.
Yeah.
That says more about a warrior's character than anything. And I see so many people that have that humility in our industry, and I just love seeing it.
Yeah.
I just love that. And that's why I love this conference, because I get to see people that honestly over the last 10 years, 12 years, I've learned so much from.
Yeah.
So that's why I go. I mean, that's why I support it, is because of that. And I support a lot of things that bring people together. I mean, there are people that I didn't know a year ago that I got to get to know over the last year that helped me out big time, helped us out in Ukraine, different things. And
yeah.
Relationships get built, and it's like, oh my God, like some people I never met in person, but we got connected and we helped each other out, and super big successes. It's like, wow.
It's fun. It's fun to have those meetups at the conference.
It's community.
It is. And I would like to say, in the spirit of owning it, and I did own it at the conference, we just talked about the brevity of the DEI conversation. That was my fault. It was so brief. The conference, I mistimed that panel. But I'm just happy to see everything we saw on stage. I look forward to having more conversations about all of what we discussed. I am going to call the takeaways because we're nearing on the 45-minute. We obviously are colleagues and friends and work together, so we could talk all day. So I got to wrap us here. Jake, final thoughts on the conference?
I think it's awesome. I recommend anybody interested in the security industry to go. Yeah, fantastic. That's all I got.
Perfect. Thanks, Jake. Steve?
If you don't go, you should. If you do go, get more involved in the community, reach out more, reach out to us. If you have an issue, and I'm just going to extend this out and maybe I'll regret it, I don't know. But if you have an issue and you want to bounce something, you want to sign an NCNDA, you want to pick our brain, I just want to see community grow. I want to see our community grow. I think that there's less threats, there's less active shooters, there's less people hurting children with the more protectors we have in the world.
Yep. And in the words of Bill Peeler, who I forgot to mention his presentation that I loved on mentoring, he said, look around. If you're young, find someone to talk to. If you're older, find someone younger to mentor. Like, we've got to have that relationship that you just spoke to. So there you go. Steve is willing to talk to you. I am, Jake, anyone here at the North Group. So
I want to give you an example because I think it's really important.
Okay.
I met a veteran there who I'd never met before, who's a former special operations guy. And I am talking to him in an hour. He says he wants to open up a business. I'm going to give him every bit of what I have as far as business planning material, business plans, content, because that's what it's about, right? And I'm not trying to attaboy myself. I'm just saying this guy said, hey, I want to do this. And I just said, hey, how can I help?
Yep. Let me guide you.
So
perfect. Well, thank you. Kudos. And to anyone listening or watching this, we've got a lot more podcast episodes. Go to our website, tngdefense.com. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you to IPSB for the wonderful conference you put on. Have a great day, everyone. And we'll see you right here on Time to Head North next time.
Great job. Thanks, guys.